Hi folks, Tim Sundles here again from Africa, as you can see. I've done a lot of government dysfunction videos and I've done them all live, so if you look under our live section, you'll find them. This is the first one I'm going to do taped that we download onto YouTube, just because the quality is better this way and because we can dub in a few photos. We can't really do that live. So this is very recent. This goes back to October of 24, just 6 months ago. I was taking in a camp for some friends into the national forests. I had friends that wanted to go in there and hunt. They didn't live in the area, so I was going to go in and set up a camp for them so that they'd have a camp set up. Now keep in mind, this video is about sheer unreasonable, dysfunctional stupidity. This one is not about corruption. A lot of them are about corruption and dysfunctional stupidity. This is just dysfunctional stupidity. The easiest way to take their camp in, I had taken part of it in on horseback, with pack horses. I was putting in a pretty deluxe camp and I had just a few more things to take in. So I just loaded them in the back of my 6x6 Polaris to get them in there. Now, to give you a little history, Idaho Fish and Game, which is of course a state agency as opposed to U.S. Forest Service, which is a federal agency, Idaho Fish and Game states right in their annual proclamation which trails and gated old Forest Service roads can be used with ATVs, dirt bikes, that kind of thing. And the only way you can use ATVs and dirt bikes in these areas generally is if you're packing a game animal out or if you're packing camp in and out. You can't ride back there to hunt. You have to hike or take horses. And this particular camp was only 3 miles in from the trailhead. So it wasn't like it was long distance for me. I'm used to going 15 or 25 miles in with horses. Just kind of a quick little camp setup is all I was doing. So I went to the Fish and Game office in Salmon, Idaho. And I said, hey guys, here's the exact trail I'm gonna take on my ATV to finish setting camp up. I want to check with you guys because the Forest Service has no morality, no brains, no common sense. They don't even know their own rules half the time. And they feel free to violate their own rules, but they'll write me a ticket if I violate their own rules. I said, so here's the trail I'm taking in. I'm taking my ATV. Is it in accordance with U.S. Forest Service rules? And since they print all that in their state proclamation so that hunters know what to do on what roads and what trails, they're liable. It's their proclamation. And so the lady looks at it, she gets on her computer, looks a bunch of things up, and she goes, Tim, you're totally fine to take an ATV down that trail. And I said, well, I know I am. I know according to your proclamation, your regulations that I am. But I said, I don't trust the Forest Service. These guys are just stupid. And they'll write a ticket for anything they can. She goes, well, I just told you, you can do it. Now she's on camera. They have a camera rolling in the Fish and Game office at the front desk. And I said, would you do me a favor? Would you go get one of the Fish and Game supervisors, have him come out here and look at the same regulations you looked at and give me a second opinion, because I just got a bad feeling about Forest Service. And so she brings a supervisor out. He looks it all over. He goes, no, you're good to go. You're fine. No problem. And I said, well, we'll see, won't we? So a few days later, I go in there with my 6x6 because it'll haul quite a load. And I'm going down the trail. I get in a big hurry because it's evening and I really don't want to get stuck back in there in the dark and try to navigate steep hillsides, on an ATV. It's pretty dangerous where I was going. And, I've done it many times before. but it's dangerous. So anyway, long story short, I roll the 6x6 on the side of this hill. It's, pretty steep. I just got in too big of a hurry because I wanted to beat nightfall. And so I roll my 6x6 and it goes all the way down the mountain and lands in the bottom of the canyon upside down in a creek. Now this is it's a 1,500 pound vehicle because it's a 6x6, not a 4x4. And as it started to roll, as it started to flip, I jumped off. Well, you can't jump off on the uphill side. It's physically impossible. I jumped off on the downhill side knowing that this thing was going to roll over me. And I jumped off and landed on my forearms and my legs and my upper torso. And as fast as I could, I rolled over so I could watch this thing crush me. Because if I and you'll see a video of my body taken in the emergency room. Later, my wife's going to attach it to this video. If I can see it coming, perhaps I can position my head just right or position other parts of my body just right where I sustain less damage. And I've always been a cool thinker under stress. I just think that's a genetic thing. If I know I'm going to get killed, I'll probably try to lessen the chances of getting killed. And I don't do that by panicking or freaking out. I do that by rolling over and facing what's coming and seeing if I can make an adjustment to lessen the damage, which is exactly what I did. I won't take credit for the fact that I wasn't hurt. I mean, my body was torn up, but I had no broken bones, nothing like that, no internal organ damage. Well, the dang thing rolled right over the top of me. And I remember when it hit my midsection, I remember thinking in slow motion, like there's a scientific or a medical name for what dysphyxia, something, whatever it is. When you're in an emergency situation where your mind goes into slow motion focus and you can think 100 things at 1 minute, in 1 second, and you can be aware of all the things you're thinking because everything slows down. Well, I remember thinking, so this is what it feels like to be crushed to death. and as it rolled over me, I won't take the credit for this. I'll give the credit to God. Just wasn't my time to go. Because when it's your time to go, you're not going to stop it. And I was able to somehow be in a position that my head didn't get crushed. I'm not sure how, because it went right over the top of me, but it never hit my face or head. And of course, it went airborne going down this steep mountain. As it tumbled, it picked up momentum. The rifles went flying in the air. I had 2 rifles on the front of it. I had, all kinds of camp gear. Stuff was flying in the air. And I remember laying there going, I heard it hit the creek bottom going, well, I'm obviously alive because I heard it hit the creek bottom. So I'm going to lay here for a second and I'm going to feel my fingers and my toes, make sure things work, because I did break my back once in my 20s. And I made the mistake of trying to hop up on my feet, not knowing my back was broken. It's a bad mistake. The pain is so extreme, you'll never forget it if you do something dumb like that. So I'm only smart now because I was dumb once. and I try to learn from my mistakes. So anyway, I'm laying there twitching and feeling, and my wife, who was walking behind me, had gotten off because it was a real dangerous place, really bad spot that I just figured I could do because I've done it before. Anyway, she comes running up and she's screaming. She's hysteric. She thinks I'm at the bottom of the canyon, in the creek bottom, pinned underneath this ATV. And I'm not. I'm laying right there. So for her benefit, because she was really freaking out, I went ahead and stood up, Anyway, everything was okay. Didn't cause me any extreme pain, but I wanted her to see me standing up because she was about ready to go ballistic. She thought I was dead. So I stood up. She came running up to me and we talked for a minute. I went down and picked up the rifles, picked up my backpack, picked up my binoculars, because I'm not going to leave the rifles in the woods overnight. I'm not going to leave the expensive gear. You know, those were Leica range finding binoculars. I'm not going to leave them out there. And I put my backpack on and she goes, "We're calling 911. And I said, "Kim, it's going to be dark in a half an hour. They can't get a helicopter in here to pick me up till morning. I'm not sleeping out here on a steep hillside. I'm fine. I can walk." And I grab my cell phone and look at it, and there's 1 bar of service. Now, don't ask me how that happened either, because you don't get any service back there. So she insisted I call 911. So I called the 911 operator, told her who I was. They put a locator pin on my location. She said, "We'll have a helicopter in first thing in the morning." I said, "No, I'm walking out. I'm only 2.5 miles from the trailhead." And she's like, "Oh no, don't do that. You could have internal injuries. You could this." I said, "You know what? I could have got hurt getting out of bed this morning. So I'm walking out. I feel fine. I know I'm going to be real stiff if I just stand here for another hour. I'm going to be at the point where maybe I can't walk." So I put my pack on, and Kim took her rifle. I took my rifle. And like I said, and it's not a hard hike. The Rocky Mountains have some real extreme hiking in them. This isn't one of those places in the Rockies. And I started heading for the gate. Well, the 911 lady said, "We'll have an ambulance there waiting for you, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, I don't even know if you can get an ambulance up to the trailhead. This is rough country. She goes, "Tim, I know the road." And, they're locals, so they know, the people that are longtime locals there know the mountain roads. They know everything. Anyway, so she said there'll be an ambulance there at the gate to pick you up. So we walk on out, and it's just getting dark by the time we get out, and ambulance shows up, sheriff's deputies show up, and I'm just highly embarrassed because I didn't want an ambulance. Kim insisted that an ambulance pick me up. I'm like, "Hell no, I'll just hop in the truck and drive to the hospital if you were that worried about it, but so ambulance picks me up and they transport me to the hospital, which was a lot slower going than if Kim had just drove me in a pickup truck. But here's where the Forest Service comes in. So there's no way to get my vehicle out of the creek bottom. So me, out of my own pocket, I pay $5,200 to have a helicopter come in, pick it up, and fly it out. And the Forest Service retard cop in that area, his name is Greg Stewart. And he's probably a nice guy. He just doesn't have the intellect to think. And so I'm working with him on getting the helicopter in there because you have to have a Forest Service permit to fly a helicopter to pick something up. So anyway, I told him, "I don't give a crap about your permit. I'm going to call the helicopter," because he was freaking out because, well, what if that thing leaks gas or oil into the stream? And I'm like, I get it. So by the time I got the helicopter arranged, they actually did have a permit. That was irrelevant for me. For Greg Stewart, it's a checkoff box on a form somewhere. It's really important. So then he starts giving me crap about my camp being back there for too long. And I had already anticipated, because I took it in, and my hunters came and hunted out of it and everything. And then you're only allowed to have a camp in the same spot for 14 days. So I went back in there a couple of days after the accident with a full concussion. And you'll see a short movie of my of my body in the emergency room. But I go back in there with a full concussion. I moved camp because I knew they were going to make an issue of this. I moved camp and let it sit for 24 hours. Then I moved it back to the good spot it was in. And I'm sporting a full-blown concussion by this point. I'm walking around, think I'm floating, and I got a real short fuse. It took nothing to make me angry at all, nothing. And so this Greg Stewart, Forest Service cop, calls me up and he goes, "We're going to have to cite you, for being back there on that trail." Now, I had taken pictures of the signs. There's one sign that says no motorized vehicles beyond this point. Then just behind it, there's a sign that says motorcycles and ATVs are okay on this trail. A typical Forest Service stupidity. They got two contradictory signs up on the same trail. So he says, I'm going to have to cite you for that. And I said, well, Greg, I got a friend. And by this time, it had been a week and a half after the accident, maybe a week after the accident. I said, I got a friend down there in Forest Service. And he told me, you said you were going to try and drive up to my house to cite me, but you were afraid to. I said, that might be the smartest thing you've ever done. I said, if you come to my house, I sent him a text to back it up too. I can prove all this. I've got texts of it. I said, if you come to my house, I will take it as a threat and I will deal with you accordingly. That's a quote. So he never cites me, but he keeps trying to have meetings with me so he can give me a ticket. I'm not going along with any of those meetings. I got a life. I got a business. I'm getting ready to head for Africa to come here for several months. You know, I got stuff to do.
Plus you have a concussion.
Yeah, well, plus I had a major concussion. That one hung on longer than most. I've had a number of concussions in my life, and this one hung on for 10, 12 days. It was just nasty. So anyway, so I leave for Africa, and then my employees, my manager and my secretary are calling me going, you've got certified mail from the U.S. Forest Service. They're putting notices in our mailbox for one of us to come pick it up. And I said, well, you guys know better than to pick up my certified mail. That's for me. And they said, okay, we're not going to pick it up. And I said, never, you know that. Never pick up my certified mail. That's for me. So, you know, he tried it by certified mail. He was scared to come to my house, which he should have been. And this whole thing is pointless. I sent him pictures of the signs. It's the area that he patrols. He should know, but he didn't. And I explained to him, you people do not know how to think. You look in a procedural manual to know what to do. I mean, if there was ever a piss poor product of groupthink, it's the Forest Service. And you could probably say that about most federal bureaucracies. They're a bunch of groupthink. I mean, it takes 10 people to come up with an original thought. and then it's not a very good one. So anyway, I was never given the ticket. I won't accept a ticket if I'm confronted with it because they don't even have the right to be in there writing tickets. None of this is lawful. We Americans just bend over and take it because we don't know our rights and most of us are scared. And it doesn't mean I'm not scared. I'm just not going to bow to fear. So Greg Stewart and the U.S. Forest Service have never issued me this ticket. Of course, I've been in Africa now for months and I'm going back shortly. And we'll see if they're smart enough to drop it or not. I'm not accepting a ticket. So if somebody tries to force it on me, there's going to be a problem. I just won't accept it. You know, none of this stuff is constitutional or therefore lawful. It's just one more of my Forest Service dysfunction junction stories. Our federal government is so big, so bloated, so stupid, so unnecessary, so corrupt that I really hope DOGE just slashes the Forest Service and turns federally managed states over to the states whose boundary that land lies in. That's constitutional. The Constitution is very specific about federal land being more than 10 miles outside of D.C. There is none. Read the Constitution. There is none. It's not supposed to ever be. But our lawmakers get going and then they make laws and then somebody makes rules attached to those laws and then it gets put in the Federal Register and then somehow it becomes a law. None of it is legal or constitutional. Not one bit of it. So anyway, folks, that's my story. That's today's story. I've got more. And spent my whole life dealing with the Forest Service and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and can tell you tale after tale after tale of their dysfunction and corruption and outright illegal activities. Some of them are really comical. If they weren't so sad, they'd be comical. Folks, wish you all the best. God bless. And we'll catch you on the next video. Bye for now.